My protégé deserves his own startup, the CEO, beamed, finalizing the sale. I slid a folder to the buyer. He opened it, read one line, and started to laugh. He looked at my CEO and said, "This is hilarious." That conference room moment was the culmination of 6 months of hell, 15 years of betrayal, and one contract clause that nobody remembered existed. Let me tell you how I got there. 6 months earlier, I was working late on a Thursday night. Nothing unusual about that. I had spent 15 years working late at Hampton Technologies, the company I helped build from absolutely nothing. When Marcus Hampton hired me as employee number 4, we were 3 people and a dream in a rented office space in Austin, Texas. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, and Marcus told me I was joining something special. He was right, but not in the way I thought. Over 15 years, I built every system in that company, every process, every protocol, every operational framework that allowed Hampton Tech to grow from 3 people to 420 employees came from my hands and my mind. I hired every key employee. I negotiated every major contract. I worked 70-hour weeks while Marcus attended galas and industry conferences. I took red eyes to salvage client relationships while he golfed with investors. I spent Christmas alone at my desk writing code while he vacationed in Aspen with his family. And through it all, Marcus made promises. "You are building your future here, Lainey. When we sell you, we'll be set for life. You are my partner in everything but paperwork, and we will fix that soon." I had emails going back years, text messages at 2 in the morning where he thanked me for saving yet another deal and promised me equity when the time was right. The time was never right, but I believed him. I believed in him. By the time I turned 38, Hampton Technologies was worth $87 million. I was Chief Operating Officer in title, though Marcus had been distant for months. I told myself he was busy, told myself he was planning something big. I was right about that, too. That Thursday night, I needed a file from Marcus's office for a morning presentation. His assistant Sarah had left for the day. I found the file quickly, but his computer screen was still on. An email sat open, forgotten. I should not have read it. I know that. But my name caught my eye in the body of the text, and curiosity pulled me in. The subject line read, "Hampton Tech Sale Confidential Discussion with Garrett Industries." My heart started pounding before I even finished the first paragraph. The email was from Douglas Winters, our corporate attorney. It outlined the entire sales structure. Garrett Industries wanted to acquire Hampton Tech for $92 million. Marcus was selling everything. Brandon Sutton, our 32-year-old VP of product who had joined 3 years ago, would receive 20% equity in a new venture. Marcus would retain a consulting role and walk away with enough money to retire in luxury. My name appeared exactly once in the entire document. Standard severance package for remaining C-suite, including COO. I read that line 3 times. Standard severance meant 2 weeks for every year of service. 30 weeks. After 15 years of building this company, after sacrificing everything, after all the promises and assurances and late-night texts telling me I was his partner, I was getting a severance check. My hands started shaking. I pulled out my phone and photographed the email, though I was not sure why. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I was not imagining this betrayal. Then I sat down in Marcus's leather chair because my legs would not hold me anymore. Memories flooded back. The Patterson contract that I saved by flying to Seattle on 4 hours' notice while Marcus played golf. The product launch I managed alone when Marcus was in Europe. The investor meeting where I presented our financials because Marcus had the flu, and afterwards he told me I was the reason we got the funding. Every late night, every missed holiday, every relationship that fell apart because I was always working. I gave everything to this company, and Marcus was erasing me like I had never existed. But what really twisted the knife was Brandon Sutton. Brandon with his Ivy League degree and his family money and his connections. Marcus brought him in 3 years ago as a favor to Brandon's father, an old college friend. Brandon was charming and good-looking and confident in that effortless way that people who have never struggled are confident. He called Marcus by his first name. They played golf together. Marcus invited him to dinner at his house, something he had never once done for me in 15 years. And Brandon took credit for everything I built. In meetings, he would reframe my suggestions as his own innovations. He would present my systems as his ideas, and Marcus would beam at him like a proud father. I told myself it did not matter that Marcus knew the truth. But looking at that email, I understood. Marcus saw Brandon as his legacy, his protégé, his successor. I was just infrastructure, useful but replaceable. I heard the elevator ding in the hallway. Marcus was coming back, must have forgotten something. I barely made it out of his office and back to my own desk before he walked past whistling some tune I did not recognize. He strolled by my office without even glancing in, completely oblivious that I now knew his plans. I sat in the dark for 20 minutes after he left again, staring at the photo on my phone. The betrayal was so complete, so casual that I could not even process it. He was not agonizing over this decision. He was not conflicted. He had simply decided that Brandon mattered and I did not, and he was moving forward without a second thought. I drove home at 2 a.m, sat in my apartment that I had barely decorated because I was always at work, no partner waiting for me, few friends outside the office. Family I saw twice a year if they were lucky. Everything I had sacrificed was for a company that was being sold out from under me, and I was not even important enough to get a real conversation about it. I did not cry. I was too shocked for tears. I just sat in the dark staring at that photo and wondered how I had been so stupid. How had I not seen this coming? How had I believed him for 15 years? But sitting there in the silence, something else started to build underneath the shock and hurt. Something harder and colder. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind, but the quiet, calculating kind that makes you dangerous. Marcus thought I would just accept this. Thought I would take my severance check and disappear quietly. Thought I did not matter enough to fight back. He was wrong. I spent the weekend researching, pulled every document I had access to from the company shared drives, found emails going back 14 years where Marcus explicitly promised me equity. Text messages. At 3 a.m. after I saved yet another crisis. You are my partner in everything but paperwork, and we will fix that soon. I compiled everything into a file, printed copies, made backups. By Monday morning, I had convinced myself this was just a misunderstanding. Marcus was a good person. He had just gotten caught up in the excitement of the sale and forgotten to include me in the plans. If I approached him calmly and professionally, showed him the evidence of his promises, he would fix this. We would work it out. I wanted to believe that so badly. I requested a private meeting through his assistant, Sarah. She booked it for 3 p.m. I could barely focus all day. Kept running through what I would say, how I would present my case. I would be reasonable, professional, just ask for what I deserved. At 2:45, Sarah told me Marcus needed to reschedule. At 4:30, he finally had time for what he called a quick chat. I walked into his office with my carefully prepared file and my practiced speech. His office was all windows and awards and photographs, photos of him with politicians and celebrities and industry leaders. I looked for a picture that included me. There was not one. 15 years, and I had been cropped out of his story. Marcus was distracted checking his phone while I sat down. I started carefully saying I had heard rumors about a potential sale. His whole demeanor changed instantly. The casual friendliness disappeared. His face became guarded, careful. "Where did you hear that?" he asked. I said it did not matter. I wanted to discuss my role going forward, if there was any truth to the rumors. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with eyes that suddenly seemed cold. He said there was no sale, just preliminary discussions that might never materialize. Nothing concrete. Nothing I needed to worry about. I pressed forward. If there were a sale, I said I would expect equity consideration. Given my contributions over 15 years, given everything I built, I deserve to be part of any deal. His expression shifted from guarded to something harder. He said equity was never promised in writing. I mentioned the emails, the text messages, the verbal assurances. He waved them away like they were nothing. Casual conversations, he said, not binding agreements. I had been well compensated with salary. I made good money. I should be grateful. The word grateful hit me like a slap. Grateful. For being allowed to build his company for him. I tried to stay calm. I built this company with you, I said. Every system, every process, every major deal. You told me I was your partner. Marcus stood up, signaling the meeting was over. He said he was concerned about my attitude lately. I seemed entitled, resentful. He mentioned mistakes I had supposedly made recently, errors in reports. I knew immediately those were Brandon's mistakes, but somehow they had been attributed to me. Marcus said I was not the same Laney he hired 15 years ago. Maybe I was burned out. Maybe I needed time off. Then came the real threat delivered in a voice dripping with false concern. If I was unhappy, maybe I should consider whether this was still the right fit for me. I left his office feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. He had turned everything around, made me feel crazy for even bringing it up, gaslit me into questioning my own memories of his promises, made it sound like I was the problem, not him. In the hallway, I passed Brandon. He gave me a smile that made my skin crawl. A knowing smile. He knew about the sale. He knew I had been excluded, and he was enjoying watching me discover it. That evening, Sarah caught me at the elevator. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then whispered, "Be careful. Marcus asked me to start documenting any issues with your work." The full picture crystallized. Marcus was not just excluding me from the sale. He was building a case to fire me. If I pushed back, if I fought for what I deserved, he would terminate me for performance issues. I would get nothing. Not equity, not severance, nothing. I got home that night feeling defeated, sat on my couch trying to figure out what to do next. Fight and get fired with nothing. Accept the betrayal and take my severance. Either way, I lost. Then I noticed an envelope on the floor by my door. Someone had slipped it under while I was at work. No return address, just my name handwritten on the front. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photocopy of a contract. The original operating agreement for Hampton Technologies from 15 years ago. I had forgotten this document even existed, but someone had highlighted a clause on page 7, section 4, subsection B, in bright yellow. I read it 3 times before the implications sank in. In the event of sale, merger, or acquisition, any employee present since incorporation who has served in officer capacity for minimum 10 years retains right of first refusal on any equity redistribution to be exercised within 30 days of notification. I was employee number 4, technically present at incorporation. I had been an officer for 15 years, and I had never been notified about the sale. This clause changed everything, but who sent it to me, and why? Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly researched that contract clause every evening, consulted with a lawyer friend who confirmed it was ironclad. The language was clear. Any officer present since incorporation serving minimum 10 years had right of first refusal on equity redistribution in the event of a sale. I met every single requirement. The clause meant I could claim Brandon's 20%, or part of Marcus's stake, or I could block the entire sale if they did not give me what I deserved. It was a nuclear option, but it was real, and it was legal. But while I was researching in secret, Brandon was watching me. He had noticed I was acting differently, leaving early, avoiding meetings, accessing old company files. He mentioned his concerns to Marcus, positioning himself as worried about my performance. Marcus asked him to keep an eye on things. Brandon checked the digital access logs and saw I had been in the archived contracts folder. He knew I had found something, even if he did not know what. At the next weekly leadership meeting, Brandon struck. He brought up the Riverside project, my biggest initiative, 18 months of development on a new software platform. He presented analysis showing the project was over budget and behind schedule, had charts and graphs and projections that made me look completely incompetent. I tried to defend myself. The budget overruns were approved. The delays were due to scope changes Marcus had requested. I had documentation proving everything. But Brandon had conveniently lost the emails. His word against mine, and Marcus believed him. Marcus tabled the project pending review. 18 months of my work frozen, in front of the entire leadership team. After that, everything started going wrong. Small things at first. A client called furious about a missed deadline. I never received the meeting invite. A report I submitted disappeared from the shared drive. An email I sent got mysteriously unsent before anyone read it. My access badge stopped working for the executive floor. IT called it a system glitch, but took days to fix mine while fixing everyone else's immediately. Brandon was always nearby when these things happened, always with that innocent expression. Other executives started looking at me differently. Whispers stopped when I approached. I was being systematically isolated and discredited. Friday afternoon, Marcus called me to his office. Patricia from Human Resources was there. Never a good sign. They said they needed to discuss concerning patterns in my performance. Patricia listed all the issues Brandon had orchestrated: missed deadlines, communication failures, technical problems. Then she handed me a performance improvement plan. 30 days to demonstrate satisfactory performance. Everyone in corporate America knows what a PIP means. It is a paper trail before termination. The document listed metrics that were impossible to meet. They were pushing me out before the sale closed. I signed it without arguing. Let them think I was defeated. But that night I contacted Thomas Garrett's office directly. Identified myself as Koo of Hampton Tech. Said I had information relevant to their acquisition. Requested a confidential meeting. It was risky. Could be considered corporate espionage, but I had nothing left to lose. Before I could meet with Garrett, I arrived at work Monday morning to find my office cleared out. My personal items sat in a box at reception. Marcus emerged from a conference room looking almost apologetic, but not quite. He said they were restructuring my role. I was being moved to a consultant position, smaller office, reduced access, no direct reports. Brandon would absorb my responsibilities temporarily. It was not technically a firing, but it might as well have been. Effective immediately. My computer access was limited. I could not reach most company files anymore, including the contracts folder. The original agreement with that crucial clause was locked away in archives I could no longer access. I only had the photocopy someone had sent me, and I still had no idea who my mysterious helper was. My new office was in the basement level near the server room, windowless, tiny, fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly. My title was Special Projects Consultant, which meant nothing. I had no projects, no responsibilities, no purpose. I had been put in corporate purgatory, isolated, and forgotten. Marcus avoided me entirely. Brandon sat in my old office. My former team members would not meet my eyes in the hallways. I was a ghost haunting the company I had built. 2 weeks into my exile, a letter arrived from Douglas Winters. The company was accusing me of unauthorized access to confidential documents. They knew I had been in the contracts folder. They were threatening legal action, corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty. The letter suggested I could face a lawsuit for $1.2 million. I had $4,000 in my savings account. I could not afford to fight even the preliminary motions. The lawsuit was designed to crush me financially, force me to resign quietly in exchange for them dropping the charges. If I fought, they would destroy me. My lawyer friend said defending against these charges would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. I did not have hundreds of dollars to spare some months. I was trapped. Meanwhile, my isolation was complete. The few work friends I had distanced themselves. No one wanted to be associated with someone on their way out. My assistant, Emily, was reassigned to Brandon. She apologized but would not meet my eyes. I ate lunch alone, worked alone in my basement office, went home alone to my apartment, where an eviction notice now sat on the counter because without my job I could not pay rent. 15 years of my life, and I had nothing to show for it. No savings because I had poured everything back into work. No relationship because I had no time for dating. No close friends because everyone I knew was from the office. My parents were elderly. I had not told them what was happening because it would only worry them. I was completely alone. But in that basement office, after everyone left each night, I worked. I compiled every piece of evidence I had. The photocopy of the contract, every email where Marcus promised equity, documentation of every major project I led, financial records showing my impact on company value, proof that Brandon had systematically taken credit for my work, screenshots of everything before my access got fully revoked. I found an employment lawyer named Catherine Torres, who agreed to review my case. She said the contract clause was powerful, but timing was critical. I had to wait until the sale was officially announced. Then I would have 30 days to invoke my right of first refusal. But if I was fired before the announcement, my claim would weaken significantly. I had to survive long enough. 4 weeks after my demotion, the announcement came. Company-wide meeting. 420 people gathered on the main floor. Marcus stood at the front looking proud and emotional. He announced that Hampton Tech was being acquired by Garrett Industries, promised everyone's jobs were secure, talked about legacy and new opportunities. Then he introduced Brandon as the new VP of Innovation for the combined company. Brandon would lead a startup division. Marcus beamed at him like a proud father. He did not mention me at all. I stood in the back of the crowd, invisible. But the formal announcement meant something important. My 30-day window had started. I had 1 month to invoke the clause. Except I was being systematically excluded from everything. Transition meetings happened without me. I could not access the final sale documents. Could not see the equity distribution details. Douglas Winters sent another letter. My consultant position was being phased out. My last day would be in 2 weeks, before the sale finalized. They were pushing me out before I could act. Then, on what was supposed to be my second to last week, Patricia called me to HR. They were accelerating the transition. My employment ended today. I had 1 hour to collect my belongings and leave. Security would escort me out. I was being fired 10 days before the sale finalized. 22 days before my window to invoke the clause closed. As security escorted me to the elevator with a box of my belongings, I saw Brandon standing near Marcus's office. He was watching me. He mouthed better luck next time. The elevator doors closed. I stood there holding that box, looking defeated. But I was smiling. Just slightly. Because yes, I had been fired, but the sale had been formally announced. My 30-day window had started. And now I was no longer an employee, which meant the confidentiality agreements and legal threats were harder to enforce. I was free to act. I had 8 days to stop this sale, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. The morning after my firing, I met with Catherine Torres in her office. She filed formal notice with Garrett Industries immediately. The notice invoked my right of first refusal under the original operating agreement. Demanded my inclusion in all sale proceedings. Catherine had reviewed every document I provided. The clause was ironclad. Garrett Industries' legal team responded within 3 hours. They claimed my employment termination nullified my officer status, therefore the clause did not apply. Catherine fired back. Termination does not retroactively erase 15 years of service. The law was clear, but legal arguments take time, and I was running out of time. The sale was closing in 7 days. Marcus called me that afternoon. I almost did not answer. When I did, his voice was cold, angry, nothing like the mentor I once knew. He said I was being vindictive, trying to destroy something beautiful out of spite. Brandon deserved this opportunity more than I ever did. I was always just an employee, never a real builder. Every word was calculated to hurt. He threatened to countersue for harassment. Then he hung up. I sat there shaking, not from fear, from rage. The legal dispute leaked to the press. Local business reporters picked up the story. Hampton Tech coup claims betrayal in sale deal. But the article painted me as a disgruntled employee. Quoted anonymous sources, clearly Brandon, describing me as difficult, entitled unstable. My professional reputation was being destroyed publicly. Former colleagues would not return my calls. Social media comments were brutal. I became a cautionary tale about women who cannot handle workplace rejection. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, people I had never met, sharing opinions about my character. Then Douglas Winters sent a new letter. Hampton Tech was suing me for $1.2 million. Breach of contract, theft of proprietary information, tortious interference. The lawsuit was baseless, but that did not matter. I would have to spend $50,000 just to defend myself through initial motions. I had $4,000 in my bank account. The lawsuit was designed to crush me financially, force me to drop my claim. I could not fight both battles. Catherine said I had to choose. Fight for my rights, under the contract, or defend against the lawsuit. I could not afford both. 3 days before the sale closing, Catherine called with worse news. A judge had issued a temporary restraining order. I was prohibited from attending the sale closing, prohibited from contacting Garrett Industries directly, prohibited from interfering with the transaction. I could appeal, but that would take time I did not have. Marcus and Douglas had outmaneuvered me. If I was not in the room when they signed, I could not invoke my right. I had been locked out legally. That night I hit absolute bottom. Sat on the floor of my apartment with an eviction notice on the counter. No job. Lawsuit threatening financial ruin. Restraining order blocking me from the closing. Professional reputation destroyed. 15 years erased. I thought about giving up. Just walking away. Starting over somewhere else. But I kept thinking about Brandon's smile, Marcus's dismissive words, the way they rewrote history to exclude me. I was not giving up. I just needed a different approach. At 2 a.m, reviewing documents for the 100th time, I found it. The clause did not actually require my physical presence. It required written notification to all parties within the 30-day window, delivered via certified mail or direct service to designated representatives. I did not have to be in the room. I just had to get the notification to the right people before they signed. Catherine confirmed it. Written notice was legally sufficient, but there was a problem. The closing was in 2 days. Certified mail takes 3 to 5 days. I had to hand deliver it. But I was prohibited from going to Hampton Tech offices, and I did not know where the closing meeting would be held. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The closing is at Garrett Industries headquarters, downtown tower, 10th floor. 2 p.m. Wednesday. I responded. Who is this? No answer. Then another text. You were always the real builder. Make him pay. Then the folder under your door came from me too. Someone on the inside had been helping me all along. I texted back, Why are you helping me? 5 minutes passed. Then, because he did the same thing to my sister. She did not fight back. I wish she had. Another text followed. The buyer, Thomas Garrett, arrives at 1:30. He parks in spot, 47 executive level. He walks through the main lobby. You have a 30-second window. I understood. I could not go to the meeting, but I could intercept Thomas Garrett before he went upstairs. Hand him the notice directly. Make sure he saw the clause before signing anything. The next morning, another email from Douglas Winters. The lawsuit had been amended, adding criminal charges, stalking, harassment, criminal trespass. If I came anywhere near Hampton Tech employees or the sale proceedings, I would be arrested. They had anticipated my plan. Going to Garrett Industries headquarters would violate the restraining order. I would be arrested before I could hand over the documents. 1 day left. No legal way to deliver the notice. No way to invoke my rights. I would lose everything, unless I did something illegal and risked jail time. I had 26 hours to decide, but really there was no decision to make. This was my life they were stealing. I was going to that closing meeting, restraining order or not. I woke at 5 a.m, had not slept. I dressed in my best suit, the one I wore on my first day at Hampton Tech 15 years ago. Looked at myself in the mirror, printed multiple copies of the contract clause, highlighted in yellow. Created a folder with all my documentation. Original contract. Emails. Proof of my contributions. Evidence of every promise. I was violating a restraining order. could go to jail. But I had nothing left to lose except my dignity, and I was not giving that up. Garrett Industries headquarters was downtown. I left at noon, arrived at 12:45. Parked 3 blocks away in case they were watching. Sat in my car gathering courage. Catherine called begging me not to go. Said I could face jail time, criminal charges, more lawsuits. I told her this was my life they were stealing and I was taking it back. I hung up. The building was glass and steel, 40 stories of corporate power. I entered the lobby at 1:15. Security desk with guards. I looked like I belonged. Good suit. Confident walk. Folder under my arm. Headed toward the elevators. "Ma'am, sign in, please." My heart stopped. I went to the desk. The guard asked who I was meeting. I said Thomas Garrett, 2 o'clock appointment. He checked his computer. Said my name was not on the list. I said there must be a mistake. He said I could not go up without authorization. I was stuck in the lobby. It was 1:20. I pretended to make a phone call. Watched the entrance. At 1:28, 3 people entered. Marcus, Brandon, Douglas Winters. They walked straight to the elevators. Security waved them through. They were expected. On the list. They disappeared into an elevator. My window was closing. At 1:32, a town car pulled up outside. Through the glass doors, I saw a man in his 60s step out. Silver hair. Expensive suit. The bearing of someone important. Thomas Garrett. He walked toward the entrance. I moved to intercept. Met him just as he entered. "Mr. Garrett, I am Lainey Marshall, COO of Hampton Technologies." He stopped, looked at me with mild curiosity. "Hello, Miss Marshall. I am expected upstairs." "I know. I have documents you need to see before you sign anything." He glanced at his watch. "I am afraid I do not have time for anything that is not on the schedule. There is a clause in Hampton Tech's original operating agreement that affects this sale. You need to see it before you commit $92 million. That got his attention. "What kind of clause?" Security guards approached. "Ma'am, we need you to leave the building." Thomas held up his hand. "Wait. Let her speak." I explained quickly. I had been with Hampton Tech since incorporation. Served as an officer for 15 years. The original operating agreement contained a right of first refusal clause. Any officer present, since incorporation gets first refusal on equity redistribution. I was never notified. The sale could not legally proceed without my consent. Thomas's expression shifted from curious to concerned. He asked to see the documentation. I handed him the folder. Security guards were on their radios. Douglas must have alerted them. Thomas opened the folder. Started reading. The elevator dinged. Douglas Winters rushed out. Saw me with Thomas. "Mr. Garrett, please do not listen to her. She is subject to a restraining order." Thomas held up his hand again. "Give me a moment, Douglas." He kept reading, flipped through the emails, the promises, the evidence. Douglas was frantic. She is a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage everything. Thomas looked up. "Douglas, be quiet." He continued reading. The lobby was silent except for pages turning. Finally, Thomas looked up, looked at me, then at Douglas. "This is legitimate. Why was I not informed of this clause?" Douglas stammered. "We did not think it was relevant because her employment was terminated prior to closing, so naturally we assumed that her officer status had been nullified, and therefore the clause would not apply in this particular circumstance." Thomas cut him off. "Her termination does not negate 15 years of officer status. This clause is ironclad." He closed the folder, looked at me, Miss Marshall, I think you should join us upstairs. Security tried to stop me. Thomas said she is with me. Anyone who prevents her from coming to this meeting will answer to me personally. Douglas was on his phone, furious. We rode the elevator in silence, Douglas glaring at me with pure hatred. Thomas seemed almost amused. The doors opened on the 10th floor. We walked down a corridor into a conference room. Marcus and Brandon were there, 2 other Garrett Industries executives. Marcus saw me. His face went white. Brandon looked confused. Thomas gestured to the empty chair at the end of the table, directly across from Marcus. I sat down. Thomas, she is not supposed to be here. There is a restraining order, Marcus started. The restraining order is irrelevant now. Miss Marshall has brought to my attention a significant legal issue with this sale. He placed my folder on the table, slid it toward Marcus. Marcus opened it, saw the contract clause highlighted in yellow. His face went from white to red. Brandon leaned over, looked at the documents, did not understand what he was reading. Thomas explained, "It appears Miss Marshall has right of first refusal on any equity redistribution, including the 20% designated for Mr. Sutton." Brandon's face changed. Understanding, then panic. "This is ridiculous. That contract is 15 years old," Marcus said, "and still legally binding. My attorneys will need to review this before we proceed." Marcus was losing control. She is just bitter. She is trying to destroy this out of spite. Whether or not that is true is irrelevant. The law is the law. Thomas looked at me. "Miss Marshall, do you intend to exercise your right of first refusal?" I looked at Marcus, then at Brandon. This was the moment. I had all the power now. I could demand Brandon's 20%, could demand a stake in the new company, could block the entire sale, and watch everything Marcus built collapse. Marcus stared at me, finally understanding his mistake. Brandon looked sick. "I said I need a moment with Mr. Garrett, privately." Thomas nodded. "Everyone else, please step outside." Marcus started to protest. Thomas said firmly, "Now, Marcus." They filed out. Marcus, Brandon, Douglas, the other executives. The door closed. Thomas and I were alone. He looked at me, waited. I said, "I do not want Brandon's stake. I do not want to block the sale." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you want?" I slid another document across the table. "I want what I have always wanted. Recognition for what I built." Thomas picked it up. "Read my proposal. I wanted 15% equity, funded from Marcus's share, not Brandon's. I wanted my title and role restored in the transition. I wanted to be part of the leadership team going forward, and I wanted a public acknowledgement of my contributions. My terms were reasonable, fair, based on my actual contributions over 15 years. Thomas read carefully. Then he started to laugh, a genuine, delighted laugh. "This is perfect," he said. "What do you mean?" "We have been looking for someone who actually knows how Hampton Tech works. Marcus is a visionary, but he is not an operator. Brandon is," he paused, diplomatically young. He looked at me. "We want someone who built this company, someone who knows every system, every process, every relationship." He extended his hand. "Miss Marshall, I think we can work with your terms." We shook. Thomas opened the door, called everyone back in. They filed into the conference room. Marcus looked anxious. Brandon looked terrified. Thomas addressed the room. "Miss Marshall has agreed not to block the sale." Marcus visibly relaxed. However, the sale terms need to be adjusted. Marcus tensed again. Thomas explained. Laney would receive 15% equity funded from Marcus's share. Brandon kept his 20%. Laney would serve as COO of the combined company. Marcus's face went through several emotions. He was losing millions from his payout. His pride was shattered. His golden boy still won, but the woman he dismissed was now above both of them. "This is extortion," Marcus said. "No, this is correcting an oversight. If you had honored your promises to Miss Marshall 15 years ago, we would not be here." Thomas looked at Marcus coldly. "Honestly, Marcus, I am disappointed. I do not do business with people who do not honor their commitments." The words hung in the air. Marcus had been exposed as someone who betrayed his partner. Douglas tried to save it. If we could just review the terms and possibly negotiate some alternative arrangement that might be more amenable to all parties involved. The terms are non-negotiable. If you do not agree, Miss Marshall exercises her right of first refusal, and there is no sale at all. Silence. Marcus looked at Brandon. Brandon looked at the table. Marcus looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time in months. Saw the woman who built his company. Saw what he tried to erase. He said quietly, "Fine." New documents were drafted. Took 4 hours. Lawyers worked while we sat in that conference room. Marcus would not look at me. Brandon kept glancing at me like I was a bomb about to explode. At 6 in the evening, the new agreements were ready. Everyone signed. The sale was official. I was now a 15% owner, COO of the combined entity. Thomas shook my hand. "Welcome to Garrett Industries, Miss Marshall. I look forward to working with you." Marcus packed his briefcase. Left without a word. Brandon hesitated, then approached me. "I did not know about the promises he made to you." I looked at him. "Yes, you did. You knew, and you enjoyed watching me get pushed out." He had nothing to say. He left. I sat alone in the conference room, looked at the signed documents. After everything I won, not just survived, won. The next morning, news of the sale terms leaked to the business press. Betrayed, COO fights back and wins. The narrative had flipped completely. I was no longer the villain or the disgruntled employee. I was the underdog who refused to give up. Former colleagues reached out with apologies, some genuine, some clearly trying to get on my good side, now that I had power again. I was gracious, but I remembered exactly who had abandoned me when things got hard. My first day back was surreal. I had a corner office on the executive floor, larger than Marcus's old office. Brandon was technically my peer in the organization chart, but everyone understood the real hierarchy. My former team was reassigned back to me. Emily, my old assistant, came to my office, in tears apologizing for abandoning me. I told her it was okay that I understood the pressure she had been under. The first executive meeting, I sat at the head of the table, presented my 90-day integration plan. Thomas Garrett was impressed. I was exactly what they needed, he said. Marcus's reputation never recovered. The business community talks and word spread quickly. He had tried to erase a 15-year partner, steal credit for her work, and rewrite history to exclude her contributions. Other companies questioned his integrity. He took his payout and essentially retired, trying to position it as his choice. But everyone knew his legacy was not building Hampton Tech. It was trying to steal it from the person who actually built it. He became a cautionary tale in business schools. Brandon struggled in his new role. Without my systems and Marcus's favoritism protecting him, his lack of real competence was exposed. Thomas Garrett saw it within 3 months. Brandon was quietly reassigned to a smaller division away from the spotlight. He eventually left for another company, where presumably he would take credit for someone else's work again. I did not feel sorry for him. 3 months after the sale, Sarah requested a meeting, Marcus's former assistant. She came to my office looking nervous. I said it was you, was it not? The contract under my door, the texts telling me where the closing would be. She nodded. Explained that her sister had worked for Marcus 8 years ago, built his entire HR system from scratch. He promised her equity, then brought in his nephew instead, and pushed her out. Sarah's sister never recovered professionally, ended up in a completely different career. When Sarah took the job as Marcus's assistant, it was partly to understand what had happened to her sister. When she saw Marcus doing the exact same thing to me, she could not stay silent. She had access to the old files, knew where the original contracts were stored. She sent me that clause because she wanted someone to fight back. Her sister had not, and Sarah always wished she had. I thanked her, offered her a promotion to executive assistant reporting directly to me. She declined graciously, said she was leaving to start her own consulting business, but she was glad I had won. We hugged. I realized Marcus had probably been doing this for years to different people. I was just the first one who fought back successfully. I started implementing changes immediately. Transparent equity policies. Everything in writing, no more verbal promises and handshake deals. Protections for early employees, so they could never be erased the way I almost was. Thomas Garrett supported every change. He said this was what ethical business looked like. The company thrived under the new leadership. My systems, now properly valued and resourced, drove significant growth. Within 6 months, company value increased by 20%. Garrett Industries considered Hampton Tech their best acquisition. My personal life improved too. I started dating again, took weekends off, something I had not done in 15 years. Reconnected with my parents, told them the whole story. They were proud of me for fighting. I made real friends outside work. Joined a running club. Took a pottery class. Discovered I was an actual person, with interests beyond spreadsheets and operational efficiency. I was still ambitious, still driven, but now I had balance and boundaries. I would never again sacrifice everything for a company, because I learned the hard way that loyalty only matters when it flows both ways. 6 months after that conference room confrontation, Thomas stopped by my office. Said there was a journalist who wanted to interview me about what happened. Write a feature story. I agreed immediately. I wanted other people to know that you can fight back, that you can win, that your work has value, even if someone tries to say it does not. The interview would be published next month. The title, they told me, would be, "She Used a Contract Clause to Destroy Her CEO's Legacy." I knew my story would resonate, because there are thousands of people like me out there. People who built something and watched someone else take credit. People who were promised the world and given nothing. People who were told they were family until it was time to sell. I wanted them to know, do not accept it. Fight back. Document everything. Know your worth, and never ever let anyone erase your contributions. People ask me now if I regret how things went down, if I wish it had not gotten so ugly. I tell them no, because sometimes things need to get ugly before they get fair. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to win clean, and sometimes destroying someone's legacy is the only way to build your own. I built Hampton Technologies, and now finally, everyone knows it. Looking back, I realized the most important lesson was not about contracts or equity or even justice. It was about knowing your value even when everyone around you tries to diminish it. Marcus spent 15 years telling me I was just an employee, just infrastructure easily replaceable. I almost believed him, almost let him erase me from the story of what we built together. But I did not, and that made all the difference. If you are watching this, and you have ever felt invisible in your own story, if you have ever built something only to watch someone else take credit, if you have ever been promised the world and given nothing, I want you to know something. Your contributions matter. Your work has value, and you have more power than you think. Sometimes that power is in a contract clause nobody remembered. Sometimes it is in documentation you kept when others were careless. Sometimes it is in the courage to stand up when everyone tells you to sit down. But it is always there, waiting for you to claim it. So, here is my question for you, and I really want to know your answer. Have you ever had to fight for recognition of your work? Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to take credit for what you built? What did you do? Did you fight back, or do you wish you had? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences matter. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you are stronger than you think, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about people who refused to be erased, who fought back against injustice, who claimed their power when everyone told them they had none. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is fighting their own battle right now and needs to know they are not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you built it. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. I wish you the courage to fight for what you deserve, the wisdom to document everything, and the strength to never, ever let anyone erase you from your own story. Until next time.